Andy Burnham's regular meetings, the question time, to meet the public, to take questions. He hasn't seen any of the questions that have been submitted. Have you?
No.
No. It's really important that this is a key forum as part of the Mayoralty to connect with the people, to answer your questions as clearly and straightforwardly and honestly as possible. So, without further ado...
I'm a politician. I will try, though.
You'll try. You'll try. Very good.
It's great. It's brilliant to see so many people.
Yeah, and just to let you know, my name's Michael Taylor. I'm a journalist. I edit a business website called thebusinessdesk.com. I've been a journalist here in Greater Manchester since 2000. And I've been asked as an independent journalist to come along and adjudicate, answer the questions, and keep order. So hopefully everybody's going to be well behaved. As luck would have it, all the people who've asked a question are here, except one, the first one. So I'm going to read it out. And Andy, it's something you get asked quite a lot, but I think it's something that people talk about quite a lot. Tony Perkins, who asked the question, said, has ULEZ reached its conclusion? I think he means CAS, the Clean Air Zone.
Yep.
And what's happening to all the cameras? So it's a straight...
Yes, no, clear question. I think I can meet your test about straightforward. Anyway, evening, everyone. Thanks so much for coming, and thanks to the Fusilier for hosting us. It's a great place to come to. And thank you, Leader of the Council, Eamon, for being here and hosting us in Bury. So, yes, the idea of a charging clean air zone is over. It's gone. Eamon did a lot of the work on this, actually. We led a call for an investment-led approach, which has now been accepted by the government. So give people incentives to change their vehicle, help to change their vehicle, rather than hitting them with a charge that they couldn't avoid. And we looked at this carefully. We realised the scheme wasn't doable after the pandemic. It was always going to be difficult, really wasn't doable. And we've got to, in many ways now, the right place. In terms of the cameras, and it's actually an interesting point to throw out to all of you, because I'd be interested in your views. Deputy Chief Constable's with us tonight, and the Deputy Mayor as well, Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, Kate Green. We're about to go out to a consultation on this. We would propose that the camera network be made available to Greater Manchester Police, or jointly, I should say, to Transport for Greater Manchester and Greater Manchester Police. At the moment, only TFGM have the permission to use the cameras in real time, because they're what you call the data controller. The use of them, though, has been made by GMP, because where GMP are investigating crimes, and some quite serious crimes, GMP can apply to TFGM to say, can we have data from this day, on this time, in this location? And that is provided, and that has been used in evidence for some the most serious crimes. I think we're talking of murder, rape, and very serious offences. So the proposal is, and I understand people may have kind of views about this, and they need to be carefully considered, but it would be to give GMP real-time access as well. So you can imagine in a missing persons situation, or in an unfolding situation, how having that access would be helpful to GMP. One thing that maybe, Terry, you want to pick up, because you know this in much more detail than I do, you advise me that GM, sadly, for historical reasons, has probably the least developed what's called ANPR network in the country. So other bigger city regions have a much more developed system of automatic number plate recognition that they have built from a policing perspective over many years. We have a very small one by comparison. However, if the CAS cameras do come over to GMP, we would go from having one of the poorest to the best pretty much overnight. We would still use the cameras for traffic management purposes and all of those things, and dealing with incidents on the roads. But I would personally be strongly in favour of GMP having that access. But we know that people may have different views about these issues, and we would do a full and proper consultation on the issue. I'm looking towards Kate and Terry just to see if there's anything you would like to add to that.
So it's absolutely as Andy says, that, you know, public money's been spent on the cameras, not, I'm glad to say, by us in Greater Manchester, but by the government. But we want to get value for money from them, given that they are there, and we don't want to incur the cost of taking them all down again. And as Andy says, GMP are already making use of them, but if we could have a system where they could access all that information in real time, it would improve the ability to solve serious crimes. They're not speed cameras. We need to be really clear about that. They wouldn't catch us speeding. But we are very keen to consult residents on whether people think it would be good for us to sustain that access and speed up GMP's access so that we could track cars off the back of the number plate information that can be captured.
Just on a real...
Would you like a microphone, Terry?
Cheers, thank you. You happy it's on? Yeah. So just on a real sort of common sense, practical basis, what does it mean? So ANPR, Automatic Number Plate Recognition System, that's what it's called. It's basically cameras on lampposts. Every police force in the land has access to them. We use them lifetime for, God forbid, the extreme, which is a child abduction. Somebody's in a car, kidnap a child, drive away. It does happen, sadly. Through to you're a builder and your van gets stolen from outside a job. Yeah. That vehicle then, as it drives through Greater Manchester, hits our current cameras. Compared to my last force, which is Lancashire, I was really, really quite surprised and shocked just how little coverage we've got here, considering the risk and the safety requirements of the public. So we use them for that. So as soon as that vehicle hits a camera, it flags straight through to our control room that have got all the officers on the radio, and they can deploy in live time police vehicles, the traffic cars, etc., to intercept. Now, we do that every day. We do it several times every day. In fact, genuinely, on the way here, I was listening to the police radio in my car, and there's a job in Greater Manchester, probably still ongoing now, where there's a gentleman with a child in a car, and we're trying to track him down. But because of the lack of infrastructure that we've currently got, it's not good enough, the bottom line, in my professional view. If we got access to the CAS cameras that are already there, overnight, it's like a spider's web comes across Greater Manchester, and you've seen how many they are. Can you imagine how effective that's going to be to keep people safe, keep your families safe? That's why we're making a plea. It's not Big Brother. I'm sure people will say that, and I understand that. Everybody's opinion's valid. Yeah. On a common sense basis, that's what it's about. You get your car nicked, you get your child abducted, you get a criminal who needs arresting. We can, overnight, at a flick of a switch, get access to hundreds of cameras that's going to let us keep you safe, basically.
So the obvious question is, what's stopping that from happening?
Rightly so, because it is the state having access to cameras, rightly so. Part of the agreement for ANPR systems is that if you want to increase it of any significant level, you need to do a public consultation.
Okay.
Yep. The public need to say. And that's, we're in a democracy, aren't we? Yeah. That's fair, that's right. What I always try and do in this, though, is just bring it down to a really common sense basis that I understand the Big Brother accusations, but actually, from a Bobby's point of view, it's just about trying to catch baddies on behalf of the goodies. That's it.
Okay.
I mean, from my point of view, just to add very quickly, Michael, I wouldn't feel comfortable with cameras having gone up for one purpose, then just being switched to another without, a public consent of that change. I think it is right and proper, because there will be some people with different views in the city region. There's also the question of the signs, but I would like to see if we could repurpose the signs. There's lots of potential uses of them. We don't promote park and ride in Greater Manchester as much as we should, is one obvious thing. There's public safety messaging. There's a whole host of things that we might want to repurpose the signs for. And then the last thing is, I can imagine some people sitting here saying, does this all mean we don't care, Eamon and I care about clean air? Well, of course we do. We want the air in Greater Manchester to be cleaner, but we're backing the B network to get that. We're looking at an all-electric bus fleet by the end of this decade. We've got trams that already are zero emission, running on renewable energy. We think that's the best route to clean air. Because actually, one of the flaws of the clean air zone was it was only going after nitrogen dioxide. Now, don't get me wrong, that can cause real harm. But particulates are also part of air pollution. The little bits in the air from brakes and from stuff on the car, tyres. Sorry, Eamon. Yeah, thank you. If everyone could keep doing this all night, that would make my job a bit easier. Obviously, public transport deals with nitrogen dioxide and particulates. So the B network, I always have argued, is better because the CAS almost didn't do what it said on the tin, really. It only dealt with some of the air pollution, but not all of it.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to move to the next question now, and that's been submitted by Deborah Green. So if someone can get a microphone to Deborah on the back row over there.
Thank you. My name's Deborah Green. I'm a councillor in Prestwich St Mary's. And this is my question. How can we ensure working class access to the arts? The number of working class people in journalism, acting, filmmaking and the arts is very low. We are not giving our kids the opportunities their grandparents had. It's regressive and we need to do better.
Yeah, good question.
Great question.
I think it's actually getting worse, isn't it, as time goes on. I know a lot about the music industry, take a lot of interest in it. I hear a common critique of the music industry. It's becoming more and more middle class because these days, you don't get the airtime on the radio or the TV that the bands that we're all familiar with from the 80s and the 90s would have got. You have to go out there and play live all over the place to begin to get noticed. And if you haven't got parents that can fund that, then you're not going to come through. I mean, obviously, we've got some great young bands around Greater Manchester now, but, it's tough for them, to do that. You look at the other parts of the creative industries, they're still running on this thing that if you can work for free, you can get your foot in the door in the, in the film industry or in media or whatever else it might be, or in drama, performing arts. So, you're absolutely right. What are we doing? Well, the GMCA Culture Fund does still fund something called Inspire, which is small grants to help people from working class backgrounds to get little bits of money to help them get a grant to start up and buy equipment. But the big answer I've got to your question is the MBAC, the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate, which is a big personal passion of mine. For those who don't know about it, what I am trying to do is create an equal alternative to the university route for young people growing up in Greater Manchester. Eamon, again, is a big part of our work on this. The idea being that there's a technical path for all young people, and because we are strong in the creative industries, one of our designated gateways is towards culture and creative sectors. I want the organisations that we fund, like the Halle and the Royal Exchange, but the wider creative industries in Greater Manchester, to stop doing this unpaid intern thing and start to give us real placements, real opportunities. So young kids here in Bury could have a kind of line of sight to an opportunity working in the arts world or creative industries, following the MBAC path, taking course at 16 T levels or whatever it might be. So, it needs to become structured and it needs to become fair, doesn't it, to all. And actually, it's why we fund the R-Pass, the free bus pass for our 16 to 18s, because those jobs are not evenly spread around Greater Manchester, are they? They're clearly going to be more the closer you get to the city centre, and that commitment to free travel for our 16 to 18s is crucial. And somebody was only telling me today that a young person they knew had held down a job in the arts because of the R-Pass, and that's what it's there for.
Thank you, Andy. Right, we'll move on to the next question, which has been submitted by Walt Crowson. Walt, in the second row down here, thank you.
Thank you. I'm asking this question on behalf of the Workers' Education Association, the WEA, which hopefully people have heard of, which has been around for a long time, helping people into all sorts of learning opportunities. The 2% cut in the adult skills budget will have an extremely detrimental effect on the people of Greater Manchester. Greater Manchester has an extremely high proportion of adults who are far from the labour market and need all the support they can get to help them become economically active, as well as helping them develop their confidence, mental health and well-being, which in turn will save money in the NHS. What are you and other Metro mayors doing to look at the devolved funding you have across the board, not just on skills funding, to become more creative in addressing these needs? And the idea behind that is, if you like, to do what you've done with the buses, is to have a learning and employment journey that everybody can get on, which is actually links everything together rather than being dysfunctional. So once person starts that journey, they're supported all the way along, right into employment and not just left there, because we've got to have sustainable employment, not just getting numbers off the dole, as it were.
Yeah. It's a really great question, and it starts with a difficult thing, which is that 2% cut, which I think means, looking at Eamon to correct me if I've got this wrong, about £16 million cut for Greater Manchester. So you all know I've kind of taken an approach since I was first elected that it's place first rather than party first. And I called the last government out when they did some things that I disagreed with. I will do the same with this one, my own. I can't see how it makes sense to cut the adult education budget by that amount when we are trying to encourage more people into work. And that is funding that we can use more flexibly than the DWP can use. And Workers' Education Association, we're big supporters of yours, as you know, and you've provided brilliant adult education for many decades in Greater Manchester. So I'll be honest, I just find this a really disappointing cut. It came out of nowhere, and I don't know why it's been done. However, obviously we have to respond to pick up the point that you said, and I like the way you put it about you've integrated the buses into one system. So how about integrate education at all ages into a single system that's easy for people to navigate? And that's exactly what we're trying to do. To support the MBAC, I've talked about an all-age integrated technical education system in Greater Manchester. In the past, and this was true of the government I was in, the Blair government, the Brown government, everything was fragmented too much. All these institutions were hived off and everything became too confusing to the public. And I think you've got to bring it back together again and make it work better for people. So that's on the education side. On the DWP side, we're making a big argument to the government that I don't believe there's any case anymore to pay large corporate entities, you know the kind of names of these entities that do all of these outsourced public services. Why are they getting huge amounts of money to do employment support in Greater Manchester? We believe we know more in terms of what our residents need, the opportunities that we've got, and we're making an argument for that money that's held currently by those large corporates to be spent through our local community and voluntary organisations, indeed museums like this, where you can help people with volunteering on a pathway towards a skill and in towards work. So we're saying let us do that. And actually, if we were able to link DWP and employment support funding with what's left of the adult education budget, and bear in mind there's a lot of it left, it is a 16 million cut, but we still have around 85 million pounds in it or something there or thereabouts. We'd make it all go further if we did it as one big joined up pot, which I think is what you're talking about. So we're definitely making those arguments just so everybody understands this. It's a little technical, but I'll try and explain it kind of simply as I can. From Tuesday next week, 1st of April, Greater Manchester is going to a new funding arrangement with Whitehall, effectively. So we will receive our money in a different way, no longer in the little pots that all the Whitehall departments, DWP, Health, Transport, used to give it to us in these little tiny, with all of their bureaucracy around it. We're receiving our money in more of a block of funding like Wales and Scotland have received. And the amount of money in that pot at the moment is £630 million. And it sounds a huge amount of money. It is a huge amount of money. But it's already spoken for in many ways. But it does give us more flexibility at the edges to sort of use it differently and set new priorities rather than the ones that the Whitehall departments have set for us. So it is a big move, but my argument is put everything through that single pot. Every budget that's held nationally by a Whitehall department should be going through that single integrated GM place-based pot. Because I am confident, honestly I am, that we will make better use of that money than they do. You know, they work in their silos, they don't join things up, they spend a huge amount of money on corporates providing employment support. They don't give people what they actually need, whereas your organisation does. And you know, we think if you do a more bottom-up approach, integrate it all, that would be better. So I hope that answers. I think we can mitigate the effect of this cut, but I still come back to where I started. I wish the government hadn't made it.
Okay, can I ask a supplementary on that one, Andy, around the government's attempts to put forward plans last week to cut the welfare bill? It seemed to me that there was trace elements of the policies that you've advocated, particularly in your last manifesto, around repurposing job centres, that somehow got lost amidst the rest of the government's messaging, which was cutting PIP payments, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I have concerns, which I said about what they're doing. You know, you've got to be really careful. My dad always said to me, you know, and we had similar debates when I was in that Labour government before this one, never cut help for people who can't work. He just says it's just or people who really struggle to make it work. You know, it's the last place ever any government should go. So I just start from that point of view, and I still have concerns about what was announced. We will work with our disabled people's panel, by the way, on those proposed changes, and we will put, as part of the consultation on them, we will put in a really clear kind of view that largely comes from the voice of disabled people in Greater Manchester. So we will work on that. More broadly, I just think I don't know how you think about it, I'd be interested to hear anyone's views. I think the whole system needs massive change. I'm talking about the DWP system, because it's a sort of distrustful kind of deficit model system. It's looking to trip people up rather than help them out, you know, ticking boxes and looking for what's wrong and, oh, where can we find you out? And the truth of the matter is, our fellow residents in Greater Manchester who interact with it, they fear that. They fear interaction with the DWP system because they fear they're going to be caught out or punished in some way. You know, when people walk into a Job Centre Plus, I argue they've often come out feeling worse about themselves than when they went in, and it should be the opposite, surely. If you're going to help people to work, you've got to build them up and support them. So I've put forward this idea. I would like to rename all Job Centre Plus in Greater Manchester Live Well Centres. Empower people with positive support that they need. And when I mean live well, it's about not just lecturing them about work. Sometimes people need help with housing, or they need help with the debt issues that they've got, sometimes that come as a result of their housing situation. All of that creates an anxiety, and it makes it hard for them to cut through the issues. A Live Well Centre would deal with all of that, because we'd have our community and voluntary organisations in there working with people. You know, the GP services would be able to refer into these Live Well centres or the Live Well service. So we're going to bring through this Live Well approach, come what may. But I can just see that the money that goes into DWP would achieve a massive amount more, in my view, if it was built as a more empowering, bottom-up system that was delivered with our community organisations and was all about helping people out rather than tripping them up.
And ultimately, cut the welfare bill by people needing to access.
Well, we've got evidence, Michael. We have had some DWP devolution through something called Working Well, which was for people longest out of work. So people for health reasons have been out for a long time. Basically, the national system didn't really prioritise mental health, but I bet most people in this audience would know that often will be the main reason why somebody is finding it really difficult to move back towards work. And it's not so much, you know, very significant mental health problems. It can just be a real loss of confidence, a real loss of self-esteem. That, you know, as you get older, we all feel this to a degree. Do I know what to do in the workplace anymore? Will I be, you know, those are often the reasons that stop people going towards work. And if you really work on the sort of mental health side of things and the support for people, our evidence is we had, I think, twice the success rate of getting people back into work through Working Well than was achieved through the work programme when it was done in a traditional DWP way.
Is that programme still running?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Still effective?
Eamon, I don't know, you oversee it, don't you? And I don't know whether you want to say anything.
Can we get the microphone to Eamon?
Yeah, absolutely. What we are really hoping to do, as Andy said, is move it beyond just a pilot scheme and make it a business as usual scheme, so that we're not just doing it as the exception, but as was described, that becomes the rule. We've got to keep making that case to government and to Treasury, but I'm really confident that the outcomes are there. And what's really interesting about it is, because we work on in a people way rather than a sort of numbers way, we can actually tell the stories of people, and their testimony is, for me, I think, more compelling than the table of numbers at the end of the report, because it's real. Because we're actually hearing about the real barriers people face and the way in which they've moved from not being able to get out of the bed in the morning to volunteering and then part-time job and then full-time job. And that can take a lot longer than perhaps some people in Whitehall would like, but it's real life, it's real people. So we are trying to keep that going, but more than that, we're also trying to make sure that that's the way everything works. People, not numbers.
It's the difference, Eamon, isn't it, between a tick box system, top-down tick box system, computer says no and all the rest of it, and a very personalised system. And it's also the difference between a system that often puts deadlines in front of people. You must have done this by this date, and if you don't, you'll lose your benefits. To one which just says, actually, everyone has got a slightly different journey towards, most people are wanting to move forward and move in a positive direction. Just allow a bit of leeway for them to move at a pace that's right for them. It's a complete paradigm shift, if you like, in terms of the way of thinking about benefits. From my experience, I was an MP for 16 years, a minister. I sometimes think policy down there is made for the purpose of achieving headlines in certain newspapers, and it's all about tough on this and tough. And actually, sometimes it doesn't accord with the real world. And that my learning as mayor has been, I see things bottom up now rather than that old way of thinking in Westminster. Kate, probably a bit the same, and you look at the world differently from this perspective, and it's why we're challenging a lot of those old approaches.
Okay, now, we've got potentially a supplementary on the issue.
Really great idea there, but I hope that does incorporate the special children and special adults that go to special schools. I have a granddaughter at a special school, and we're lucky in this area that we do have fantastic special schools. My worry is now that she's going to college, the transport's been scrapped, they're questioning mileage. As a grandparent, it'll be me that has to do it because two parents need to work. And then they were discussing, what do they get? What help do they get? And I hope these living units that you're saying incorporate these children and young adults, because there's 6 internships which will probably go to the kids of a higher level. So from my point of view, for my granddaughter, my worry is, what are her, she wants a job, she wants to work, but who is going to help her? Once she finishes her college, she won't get any qualifications. And these are wonderful people who will do wonderful things in society if they are given the help. And as far as I can see, there's nothing for them when they get to, say, 19. She can be at college till she's 19. But what happens after that, it's quite worrying. And I think you need to remember that those special people need just as much dedication to get them in a job as anybody else, because they do want to work and they should get the opportunity to have to earn money. And I mean, universal credit, I got told about that only just recently, that it was for people who couldn't work from 16 to 18, and blow me, 2 days later, it was scrapped for anybody under 22. So the opportunities for her, she can't get a part-time job while she's at college, like a lot of the other kids can. So, although we do our best, we make sure she attends drama in Bury. We're lucky in our area, but I think it will stop when she gets to 19. What is there for her? And they just seem to get lost. And the opportunities are a lot less than if you go to college or, in mainstream. Well, so I hope those centres do incorporate them.
You spoke really well, really powerfully there. And obviously for your granddaughter, but for many other young people who are in exactly the same position. And I couldn't agree with you more. I do know you've got some really good special schools in the borough. I'm going to get the name wrong. Is it Elm Bank? Yeah, I remember I had a lot to do with Elms Bank over the years. I've been in a few times, and they are brilliant, aren't they, what they do? But it's all about that continuity, isn't it, as you say? So the best answer I can give you, and we can provide more information, it's still in development because haven't done it yet. But I mentioned before the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate, the MBAC. So the idea of the MBAC is, from kids in their teenage years, you start to give them a structure about the places they may look to work for, and then you show them the jobs at the end of the pathway. What's the actual jobs in the economy? And we recognise that for young people with special educational needs, we will need to create supported paths. And that's what I've asked the team to do, to bake that in at the start, not as an afterthought, but now, what does a supported path look like for a young person towards an opportunity? And let's identify employers, and there are many of them out there in Greater Manchester. We've got some brilliant employers who always want to do more to give back. Let's identify them as the ones who really want to sort of work with young people with disabilities or special educational needs. And then, as you say, they can be as good, if not better, than any employee they'll ever have. The potential is huge, but it just means those reasonable adjustments, as people say, to just help in the early days, just to be able to get to that position where the position can be held down. So I want to see supported paths under the MBAC for young people like your granddaughter, and good luck to her.
Thank you, Andy. We've got potentially one more intervention or supplementary on this one.
Hi, I'm Verity from Bury People's First. I had 2 letters from ESA saying one saying it's going to go in my account, and the other one saying it's not. So I rang them up and said there's an error on their system. So luckily I got it back in my account, but I'm going to have to check it now and again. So, yeah. Yeah, and I've been employed by Penn Care, so I'm a peer support worker in NHS.
Great, fantastic.
Thank you.
Great for you. Well done.
I missed your name, I'm sorry.
What's your name, love?
Verity. And you bury people first. Well, it's honestly, you've kind of said better what I was trying to say before. When you get those letters, it gives a bit of fear, doesn't it, when you're opening the letter and you're like, what's it going to say? And, the system is too impersonal. It's like, why throw out a letter saying one thing to somebody, which could be devastating news, and then another letter? It's not right. The system isn't, in my view, it's not designed in the right way. It doesn't work in the right way.
And then they had another letter not long ago saying it's not going in the account.
Yeah, well, and that, as I was saying, Michael, the system can create real fear and anxiety in people. And it just needs to be rethought, in my view, completely. And the Live Well idea is something that we are, really, really dedicated to. You can do this system in a so much better way if it was built bottom up with people and with communities. And it doesn't mean it's about being soft on benefits or anything like that. It's actually about getting, as Eamon said, more people into work, because I think more people want to work with the right type of support. But let's, as the gentleman said on the second row, link it to adult skills. Create personalised pathways for people, because in the end, I think that will get more people into work. You'll reduce the benefits bill, but you'll do it in a much better way than this sort of chop and cut and remove support. So that's. We'll be really pushing this idea at the government in the forthcoming spending review.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the. I was going to move on to the next question. I'll come on to that in a sec, but there were quite a few questions submitted that I couldn't quite pin down the right one that did it justice. So I've sort of compiled a few different ones around. Some were about the threat from the far right. Some were about the fears of Islamophobia. There were some concerns expressed about anti-Semitism. the after effects of the Gaza protests, how they were policed. There was another question about Greater Manchester in the aftermath of the riots that happened in our city centres after the incident, the horrible murders in Southport, but the riots that happened afterwards in many towns. And the only way I could sort of sum it up was Greater Manchester's better than this, isn't it?
Yep. And it shows it, I think. You know, I do feel like the world has changed in 2025. It is darker in many ways. You know, you go online and it's not too long till you feel quite depressed about things, do you? And you see a lot of hateful comment, attempts to divide people. And it kind of makes you ask the question, where does this go? Where does this go? I maybe we'll bring Kate and Terry in again here. I just want to say something about Greater Manchester Police. I don't know whether you feel this yet and whether you feel I'm about to make something of a politician's statement, but we've got a different police force today than we had even 2 or 3 years ago. Greater Manchester Police are a much better organised, capable, strong, proactive police force than they've ever been. And I've been elected representative in Greater Manchester for 24 years. They were never right, in my view. I'll be honest with you. And all my time as an MP, all the way through, finally this police force is what I wanted to see. Because they're all of the things I said before. They are tough on crime, and I'm tough on crime. I've never been soft about those issues. I want proactive policing in every community. You know, strong neighbourhood teams in every community, and the chief and the deputy have replaced those neighbourhood teams now. But they also want them to be accountable, and they are that as well. You know, accountable to you, and you know, here to answer questions as Terry Woods is here this evening. I think I say all of that because you referenced the incidents last summer. In this city region, control was not lost in terms of what went on, and you know, I'm afraid that wasn't the case everywhere, but control was not lost here. And I've said to the Chief Constable and the Deputy Chief, you know, we do need to have a zero tolerance approach to hate crime in the same way that we've had a really tough approach to burglary, where the Chief said we're going to attend in person every burglary. The thing about hate crime is if it's not dealt with when it happens, it can have a really sort of corrosive effect on a lot of people, because a lot of people then kind of in that community will feel that there is a kind of failure to address Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and obviously both communities living in this borough, and those things will be felt. And actually in these sort of divided times, it doesn't matter, I say it doesn't matter, all of it matters, but what I'm saying is what type of hate is being put forward, particularly when it comes to race or religion. In the end, it affects everybody, because it's, you know, it's hatred of the other, isn't it? And everyone gets kind of damaged by that, and it absolutely must not be allowed to spread. All I can say to you, and I say to everybody here tonight, you know, as long as I'm your mayor, I will be absolutely true to what I believe to be Greater Manchester's traditions, and that is a place where everyone, regardless of who you are, where you've come from, your ability, your disability, your religion, the B to me says nobody's more important than anyone else. Everyone is equal. We're all part of this place. We're all trying to work together in this place. And for me, that must never change. I always remind myself, we are the place where in the 19th century, the humble cotton workers of Manchester refused to handle slave pit cotton. This place is where that happened. And anyone who forgets that is forgetting what Greater Manchester is all about. When they say, I want our country back, this was us. Sorry, that is who we were. That is who we still are. And that's what we should always be. And that's the way I will do it. And if people don't like that, well, obviously other mayors can be voted in, but I will be absolutely not deflected one iota from that vision that I believe in, that is Greater Manchester. I think it is an incredible place to work because of the way people are with each other. And we must not let these people who are out there on social media kind of sowing this division, this hate into our communities. They must not win, because if they do, where does that end up? Where's anyone's safety in a world where everyone is fighting each other? It must not be like that. So all I can say is, you know, GMP feel the same way. GMP are in complete tune with the way Kate and I and Eamon and the leaders want to work. I think in a world that feels like it's going more divided and darker around us, GMP must stay as a beacon of doing the right thing, fairness, progress for everybody, and that's us, and that's how we should always be.
Right, we're going to have a couple of the chap there, the one on the front row, and then there's a chap behind you as well. Go on, you first.
My name is Matthew.
Hi, Matthew.
We're doing the med crime as well, and we're doing the training with the schools. And I'm not very happy with these people on the tram. I'm not very happy of people swinging on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I'm not very happy with that. Because they could they hit me in the head.
Yeah.
And something like that. I keep saying to we please get down.
Yeah, well, you're right to do.
Some people are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So I'm not very happy with these college students just trying to push me off the tram.
Yeah, it's about everybody's safety, isn't it, Andy?
It absolutely is. We want a Greater Manchester where every single person walks out of their door in the morning and they feel safe. And that's what we want. And we don't want anyone, feeling threatened in any way at all. Credit to you. And you sometimes have to be careful these days, don't you? But you're right to speak up, because there'll be other people on that tram carriage thinking the same as you, but maybe not confident enough like you are to sort of to say something about it. But what society do we become if people have got? I hate it myself when I see people with their feet on the seats, and I just think.
Good.
They said to me, we'll have a look at the camera after.
Good.
And see what we can do.
Well, all credit to you, because you're doing the right.
But I think we should have these tram stands on the tram, because these people keep getting on for free.
Well, we're doing a lot. I agree with you. We're doing a lot on that, and we have a lot. No, I can agree with you. I don't want them to. I've got to make this thing pay. But we've got a lot more. You've spoken brilliantly, by the way. We've got a lot more revenue enforcement on the trams now. And Terry might want to just say something about this, because you've raised a really important question. Because Greater Manchester Police are going to take a much more active approach to policing public transport going forward. I'll just say one thing that is an initiative that I'm bringing forward this year, which GMP is supporting. Later this year, we will be introducing Travel Safe Live Chat. Travel Safe Live Chat. So what this will allow you to do, and maybe it's a safer way of raising your concerns, because obviously you're typing it in on your phone while you're on the tram. You will be able to say, something is happening on the tram I'm on from da-da-da-da, and then somebody from GMP will start having a conversation with you over the live chat. And the idea about that is to enable people to challenge incidents that are happening on the public transport system, but to do it safely. And also then, and this is where Terry can pick it up, get a response from, we have a range of ways of responding. There's police officers, obviously, but we do have travel safe enforcement officers now. We've got a bigger team that we can mobilise, but that's what you're going to do, Terry, isn't it?
Yeah. So Matthew, thanks for your question. Just as an aside, so we have police officers that work full time on the trams, and Danny, who's the boss of the trams, head man of the trams, has teams as well. But what I'll do is one of my staff members, Danny, if you don't mind, will grab your details. And we'll arrange for some of the tram police just to come and speak to you, show you the kit that they've got and what they do, and perhaps you can just have a chat to them. I'm sure they'd enjoy that as well, and they'd appreciate your insight. So we'll do that.
Yeah, lovely.
But what we're looking at with GM is that we both have, the two organisations have staff, officers, the tram security there, but we're going to look to join a lot more in the coming months and have a lot more dedicated staff. So you'll see PCSOs, a lot more police officers, Danny's security staff, and we're going to enable them to be on the same channels so that when you do live chat, we can get resources to you quickly. It's not as slick as it should be at the minute, although we have a lot of resources between us. And I think you're going to see a real difference, and the public will, on the trams. We're dead clear from a police point of view that the transport infrastructure, so trams, buses, the airport, the bus lanes, the cars, etc. It's a big part of everybody being safe and everybody being able to work, etc. So we're really committed to do it. But we'll get a cop car. You can go and have a sit in a cop car and have a chat to the bobbies, and they'll make a fuss of you. All right.
Great.
Cheers, Terry. I just want to just add there, Michael, really quickly on the back of Matthew's point. We didn't have our eye on the ball enough when we were building the B network, because you may have heard me endlessly talk about yellow buses, obviously, and fares and the frequency of services, and all those things are important. But what we found when we surveyed residents in Greater Manchester, safety, or lack of, is the number one issue when it comes to whether or not people will use public transport or not. So we realised we had to look ourselves a bit in the mirror and come up with it's true, Danny, isn't it? We had to come up with a much stronger sort of response to what the public were telling us about safety on public transport. So Travel Safe live chat is part of that, but so is this single team that Terry's talking about, tasking differently with incidents. So you've raised a really important point, Matthew. I hope some of what we've said begins to answer it.
Thank you. So we've got a few hands going up. We've got a few more questions to get through, but I don't want to deny anybody a voice, particularly as I think we've struck a chord with this particular subject. And I did say that the gentleman there had his hand up as well. So we'll come to you first. If you could take the points, and then we'll take a couple more from people in the audience. Quite a few hands going up now.
Hello, Mr. Burnham. My name is Mr. Alsop. I feel like I'm in a parallel world. You say that Greater Manchester Police have changed. You say they're accountable. They are not. I've got a list, I was going to go through them, of the 5 attacks where the police have simply not dealt with it. I was attacked and had my arm broken. I've got a metal plate. The police didn't go and collect the CCTV footage. I had to go to the police station on 9 occasions over 23 days before they dealt with it. They closed the case but didn't tell me. I won't go through the whole story. There's a 9-page letter which I can give you. They've completely failed me. To continue with this, 12 months ago, I was followed by somebody who came up to me straight in my face. I was like, "What are you doing? I'll take a picture of you," who then attacked me. The response was to tell him not to do it again, keep away from me. 6 months ago, September, the same person, I heard some footsteps behind me. It's like, oh. I said, "You've been told to keep away from me." I said, "For my safety, I will record it, and I can show you the footage of this." He came at me as I'm walking away, grabbed me, ripped my shirt, threw me to the ground because I walked past his house on a public road, repeatedly. The police, 7 weeks later, had not bothered to even take a statement from me. It's really clear. There's no argument. They just blatantly attacked me. The police, I then put an official complaint in. The day after, I got an inspector from Oldham, Mrs., by the way, sorry, acute revision. And they then said, "We'll read the statement." I said, "You haven't taken the statement." And the short version of this is that 2 weeks ago, it's been dragging on and on and on. I went to the police station and said, "What's going on?" "Oh, we're dealing with this as resolved by a community resolution." I said, what does that mean?" "Oh, he will write you an apology letter." Write me an apology letter for attacking me twice. I've been attacked 3 times in the local park by a completely separate person. One time a note was left on my car that they would trash my car unless I kept out of their park. Police have not dealt with it. The police simply don't deal with it. Sorry, and I appreciate this is a long question. On the way down on the tram, because it refers back to this previous point, there was 3 people who got on at Oldham Mumps who decided to have a fight, shouting, and I won't use all the language. Anybody want any effing cocaine? Oh, come on, we can all get off. They were kicking each other, fighting. Bottle of wine got thrown at it, smashed on the tram. So because I'm aware of that, you can go to the live chat with GMP. And I got in touch with the live chat. I was delicately trying to do it. And I was watching. The guy was like 6'2", big guy. But I was still keeping an eye because there were 2 young girls there. So I was keeping an eye. Anyway, didn't get answered. I'm now at Westwood. Didn't get answered. Got off at South Chatterton. Went to the driver and said, there's some glass here. It needs to be dealt with. We then all got told to get off at Moston because he couldn't carry on because it was dangerous with glass. It wasn't dealt with. The police did call me back when I was in Manchester. Oh, we're really, really busy, really sorry, blah, blah, blah. The police just simply do not defend people. I appreciate I could go on for 10 minutes with the number of incidents.
No, I hear you, and obviously you're raising some really serious points that need a response. What I would say, just to, in some ways qualify what I said before, I'm not saying when I said what I said that GMP get every single thing right, because clearly that wouldn't and isn't what happens. But what I was saying is broadly they have made a massive change, and the statistics speak to that. But the point about accountability, so let me come to that. Kate and I take that part of our role extremely seriously. When somebody stands up like your good self in a forum like this and says what you've said, we will take your issue there that you've raised with us and if you like, go through Terry and GMP to get a full response. And if things haven't been good enough, then that will be acknowledged and it will be put right. The accountability comes from sometimes you would want it straight away in terms of what you've reported, but if not, and if things haven't been done right for whatever reason, we are here to be able to hear those complaints. And as I say, Kate and I will always take them seriously. So if you do leave your details with us tonight, we will follow up on what you've said. The live chat system, I agree with you. It is there on the B Network app. The point is, from the autumn, we're going to be significantly enhancing the response that you will get from that service. So, again, we're sorry that it's not happened well enough tonight, but we absolutely will take that feedback, and we're working to bring in a much better service.
No, we've got a few questions to get on with.
Well, that's what we'll look at. We've obviously got to look at the details. I don't know all of the case, but let me look at the details, and then we'll come back to you.
Wow, got lots of hands going up. Let's start over there in the back row. Shavana?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, we understand that the burden of the cater for those with no recourse to public fund condition is normally left to under resources of local authority or charity like caring and sharing to support people out of poverty and homeless. Will the mayor seek to have a clear policy position to people with no recourse to public fund and homeless strategies and push central government to abolish the no recourse to public fund restriction and give people seeking asylum the right to work after 6 months in living in the country? Instead of them staying, doing nothing, if you can do something about it, because I work with refugees, asylum seekers in Rochdale. Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you for your question. I've spoken out against the no recourse to public funds policy, particularly from a homelessness point of view. You might remember when I came in as mayor, I established a scheme called A Bed Every Night. And it was really frustrating to find that, some people could be helped, some people couldn't be helped. The vast majority of people will say nobody should just be left destitute to sleep rough on the streets. They're pretty confident saying the vast majority of people would just say that is just not acceptable. And yet, why in our laws of our land are we almost saying that can be allowed? Well, it shouldn't be. So I've made those points to the government. In our case, what I find is the no recourse to public funds. It's a bit like when the government cuts benefits, as we were talking about before. It's as if as though it's paraded as though it's a big cost saving. The truth of the matter is local authorities just end up having to pick up pick up the cost of that, because we have decent local authorities who won't just leave people with nothing. So I do think the system needs reform. I actually also have come to the view that people should be allowed to work. I'm all in favour of having a functional immigration system that deals with things properly, doesn't allow people just to be left for long periods of time. If they've no status and they haven't got a case to stay, then the system has to be that people earn. Arrangements are made to remove people, but where they have a case to stay, they should not just be left sort of waiting because the Home Office has got such a long backlog. And in those cases where there is years before they're getting a decision, I think they should be allowed to work, and that actually relieves pressure on public funds, and that actually would probably build some public support for the system. So I hear what you're saying. I think the system that we've got at the moment is very seriously flawed. And with just last point on homelessness, we've had a renewed rough sleeping crisis, Michael, just because the Home Office were just evicting people without any care at all for their situation, and many of them were finding themselves on the streets of city centre Manchester, as we've seen recently. The Home Office often, it feels to us like they're working against us. They do not consult. They take decisions that suit them but not us. And we have expressed very serious concerns about some of the way that they do things.
Lovely. Andy, I'm going to move on to the questions that we've got in front of us. And if we've got time, we'll take other people's questions or points on what we've got. Because I did carefully select the questions that we wanted, that I think gave an honest account rather than having a free-for-all, if that's okay. Next question is been submitted by Mark Wynne. Mark, are you here? Yeah, on the second row there. Mark, we'll get a microphone to you. You've got a question. I'll let you ask the question.
Thank you. We operate a volunteer driver service based in several areas across GM, including Bury. Could the wider B network look at integrating volunteer driver services into the B network to help complete the transport infrastructure network to ensure there is a complete support framework that kind of helps people who are more vulnerable and the elderly?
Yeah, it's a great question. Would you mind just saying a little more about the service, what you do and the organisation that you do it with?
We offer a volunteer driver service to over 50s and the vulnerable. We take them to hospital appointments, medical appointments.
Brilliant. It's amazing.
Community centres, hairdressers, you name it, we do the lot.
And is there like a central number that people who need it?
Yes,
and what's the name of your organisation?
HMR Circle. HMR Circle.
HMR Circle. I'll be honest. I love that idea. I think it's a brilliant idea, actually.
We do take people. We're seeing people from adult social care using our services more. The elderly who don't have access to public transport. Again, people who can't get. People send. We've noticed that they can't afford the transport anymore. Local services, they're using our services as well.
Is it a Bury-based organisation?
We're based in Rochdale, but we're based like Oldham, Bury, Haywood, Middleton. So we are trying to become GM-wide. And we think that option should be available, on the B network as well. And integrate.
Well, fair play to you.
Thank you,
I think
Mark.
we all owe you a bit of a debt of thanks. Danny, did you want to pick up that? Yeah.
Get the microphone from Mark to give to Danny. It's Danny Vaughan from GMCA.
Danny Vaughan from TFGM.
TFGM.
Or GMCA. Much.
That's what it says on your boat.
Yeah, I've got both. Wear both hats. Hi. So it's a fantastic service that you guys provide, and it's for people who can't really use public transport, right? So we are reviewing right now what we call neighbourhood transport. So it's the bits we haven't yet taken over as part of the B network. So the local link and ring and ride services, and I think there's a really good fit, Andy, in terms of the service that you guys provide. So it's definitely something we could explore. Yeah.
Good, Danny. We won't make you paint your car yellow. I can promise you.
Why not? You always used to say that about the B network. You wanted yellow taxis as well, didn't you?
I would quite like yellow taxis, but you know, I'm not sure that would make me fully popular with every taxi driver in Greater Manchester. But yeah, it's a brilliant thing.
As you were saying at the big conference last week, you know, we have all these community centres, a lot more now.
Yeah.
How are people accessing them?
So AMR Circle, I've got that right?
Yeah.
HMR Circle. I think, Danny, as part of the review that you're doing, if we could, one output from tonight, because tonight as well is about getting,
Of course it is.
you know, we're obviously going to deal with the gentleman's complaint they raised.
Yeah.
We actually want actions to come from tonight. We will arrange for you to have a conversation with the team doing that review and see how we can knit you a bit more into the B network, if not make you repaint your car.
Great. Lovely, great question, Mark, and thank you for providing such a fantastic service. Hopefully they can hook you up tonight. Yeah, the next question is from Anita Zarska. Anita, second row again.
Hiya.
Yeah. Hi, Anita.
Hello. No, thank you so much for all the answers from all the other questions. Fantastic. You've kind of touched on mine a bit, so I'm going to extend it if that's all right. It comes from my work with the VCSE sector and private sector and sort of education. And I've noticed in my conversations, whether it's leading tech companies or grassroots organizations, there's sort of this resounding passion for supporting young people and giving them opportunities. And I've noticed these really beautiful sort of silos in some instances around that. And I know that Greater Manchester is trying to kind of bring all those things together. And I know you mentioned the MBAC and those systems. And I was just wondering sort of what other kind of programs or timelines or anything to be able to create the tangible effect to bring those beautiful programs together.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So a great question. And as I said before, this is like a personal passion of mine. Because I'll be honest, I was in a government that set a target for people to go to university but didn't have enough to say to kids who wanted a technical path. And I couldn't support it. When I was growing up in the Northwest, I did go to university, but the vast majority of my friends didn't. And I was really conscious about, the unfairness of that. And the MBAC is designed to correct that. The sad thing is, the Labour government of the 90s set a 50% target for kids to go to university and didn't say what the ambition was for those who didn't want to do that. And then in more recent times, Gove kind of created this thing called the English Baccalaureate that made the sort of university GCSEs the be-all and end-all, and it was all about that. So it kind of made it even worse. And, we do a thing called Be Well, a survey. I don't know if people know it. It's a survey of our year 10s in Greater Manchester, and we're just about to publish new findings from it. What it tells you is 80% say of the kids in year 10 in Greater Manchester say they've got hope for the future, hope and optimism for the future. But 1 in 5 say they don't. And that's a big number, isn't it, when you think about it? And I think it is quite high in some communities. And I personally think, if you look at the results of Be Well, kids know when the school is disinvesting from them and leaving, where it's kind of their attention is going somewhere else. They're not daft. They see that, and it's just not right. So the MBAC is about a path for everybody, and we have identified 7 sectors where we want to build really structured, clear paths from 14. So Eamon and I are working on this now. And to be fair to the last government, they did something that we think was quite valuable, which is this reform about T-levels. I'm not going to say they're perfect, but one thing they brought in was a 45-day work placement. And our experience is those are something of a game changer. There'll be people in this audience that did work experience when you were at school, and I'm sure we all have varying stories about whether that was good or bad. When I was at school, I wanted to do something. I was quite good at Spanish, not because I just was all right at Spanish. And they asked me, well, what do you want to do when you get older? So I'd like to work with languages, maybe be an interpreter. And my work experience on the back of that was 2 weeks at Thomas Cook's in St Helens, which all things in life are valuable, aren't they? You learn something from everything. I knew I didn't want to work in a shop in St Helens at the end of my 2 weeks work experience. My point being that the T-levels may have come up with something that is getting close to the right answer, because the 45-day work placements are enough for a young person to feel they belong in the environment that they're in, the organisation that has given them that work placement. And the early evidence from T-levels is over half of the young people who do those placements go on to work full-time for the organisation that provided those placements. So what I am trying to do through the MBAC is to create a situation by, realistically, this is what Eamon and I are working on, the end of this decade, whereby there is a 45-day work placement for every young person who wants one in Greater Manchester, and then they're able to apply for it on an open application basis to get those opportunities, and then they'll get paired with the college that is supporting that work placement through the T-level. And we think that could have a really big impact on levels of aspiration. For instance, the Christie Hospital have just started to provide 45-day work placements for us. Oldham NHS Trust have pioneered midwifery placements for young people. At the moment, in my view, it's too hard for young people at 14 to see where life is taking them. You know, they can't see the path at the moment. But if you start to give them that path, I think, you know, from Terry's point of view in GMP, so many young lives are sort of go off the rails at that point because they just can't see where they're being taken. If we can crack that as Greater Manchester, I think that's how we'll do it. But it's a system where we'll need all kinds of organisations in it, because some young people, as I said before, will need extra support to get to those placements, to hold them down. We want our violence reduction unit to work with young people who've been involved in violence or at risk of violence and giving them extra help on that path. So it's a really big ambition that we've got, and it won't be just all the big organisations doing it. There's a role for smaller organisations in building these pathways as well. So I hope that sounds like something you would want to work with.
So Andy, some high streets still have travel agency shops. Can they apply to join this?
Yes, although I'm not sure I'd recommend a 45-day work placement at Thomas Cook in St Helens, but there we go.
Right, I'm going to move on to the next question that somebody had submitted and is clutching in their hands, desperate to ask. And it's Samina Sadiq. Hello, Samina.
Thank you. The NHS is in an atrocious state, as we all know. What are you doing, or what powers do you have to change this and make it more efficient? I know it's going to take time because of previous neglect. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Health devolution, Andy, how's that shaping up as you see it? What outcomes have we, what's the data telling you?
The data was telling us pre-pandemic that we were making a very big difference in terms of improving health in Greater Manchester. We closed the gap in terms of life expectancy. The sad thing is the pandemic really blew us off course. You know, it's 5 years ago this week. Have you all been thinking about that a little bit? I certainly have. You know, that week in March, you know, when lockdown happened and, you know, the world changed. Without rerunning all of the debates of that, I'll just maybe mention one. You know, when the national lockdown was lifted, the first one, I was telling them it was too early for Greater Manchester, because if you remember, COVID had grown up from London, it had come up the country, and we were still with a high case rate when they lifted the first lockdown, and, you know, we never recovered from that all year. Then we were back under restrictions in July, I think it was, and then there was the whole Tier 3 thing later in the year. The upshot of all of that was our NHS here in Greater Manchester was hit harder than other places around the country. More of our young people were out of school for longer, and all the mental health impact of that. What happened was, straight after the pandemic, and you know, we feel frustrated about this, don't we, Eamon? NHS England, soon to be abolished, but they just put our NHS in a straitjacket. You must get the finances back on track. You must get the waiting list. And they made no allowances, basically, for the kind of different experience that the NHS here had through the pandemic. And I think we've been in a bad position, if I'm honest, since A&E performance is nowhere near where it should be. waiting times are beginning to come down to a degree, and the government has made some good moves in that area, but again, they're not where they should be. Access to primary care probably is a little better here than in other parts of the country. GP, it's easy, in some places easier to get a GP appointment, but it's still not what you would want. So it's not a good picture. Personally, I think the government has done the right thing by bringing responsibility for running the NHS back in to the Department for Health with accountability to ministers. I'm a former health secretary in the UK. I believe the NHS of all public services has to be fully accountable to you, democratically accountable to you, and I opposed what were called the Lansley reforms in 2012. I don't mean this as a sort of a major boast, because the government I was in didn't get everything right, but we left the NHS in 2010 with the lowest ever waiting list and the highest ever public satisfaction. And the sad thing is, if you look at it, the path of the NHS, it's just got slowly worse and worse and worse. And that reorganisation that was done in 2012 was terrible. Control was lost, and the thing got worse and worse. Then when we hit the pandemic, it really went into a really downward spiral, I'm afraid, in some instances. And I feel for the NHS staff, because the NHS staff are, I don't know if you work in the NHS, and if you're nodding, it seems like you know these issues. So the question I guess you're coming to is, what can we do about it? Our answer, again, is live well. That's our answer. We believe that lots of residents end up using the NHS because there's no alternative. They're not getting the help that they need. Their mental health is suffering. Their physical health starts to suffer. They're then ringing the GP a lot. They're going to A&E a lot. We believe we've got to have a different way of intervening to support people before their health and their mental health gets really, really poor, before their lifestyle kind of deteriorates, or whatever it might be. I'm not saying it's an easy short-term answer. I don't think there is an easy short-term answer, but it is about providing practical help, diverting people away. The thing I would like to achieve with Live Well is, if someone's ringing repeatedly their GP, the GP receptionist can say, look, we can't get you a GP appointment today, but we can get you a Live Well appointment today. Because the truth of the matter, it's about a third of people ringing at 8 a.m. every morning to get a GP appointment. A third have a social need and not a medical need. So, those people need something different. And because it's not available, they keep going to the GP trying to get that. But, there's clearly something better we can do. And therefore, it frees up the GP appointments for those who have a medical need and really need a GP appointment. I think what we've got at the moment is a slightly chaotic situation where the pressure is just intolerable. And we've got to try and slowly take pressure off the shoulders of the colleagues we have in the NHS and start to divert people away from the system. I mean, the last thing I would say is Live Well also should apply in people's homes. As Health Secretary 15 years ago, I did say at the time that if we did not invest in social care, the NHS would be dragged down by the collapse of social care. And I personally believe that is the case. Social care is the cheapest part of the system. It's everyday prevention in people's homes, and yet we massively underfund that, and we disrespect the staff who provide that care. My dad's got dementia, and these are some of the, I see them, how they care for him. These are some of the most unbelievable people you could ever wish to meet, and yet you look at their pay packet or their terms and conditions, it is absolutely shocking how they are treated. What they do is prevention. They are taking pressure off the system. If you look at the figures today, there are thousands of people in hospital beds in Greater Manchester and across the country who are medically fit to be discharged, but can't be because the care can't be put in place in the home. It's just, it's a scandalous waste of money, to be honest. That money should be put up front into social care. And again, we will be, if there is more money to come into the NHS, which we believe there might be, you've got to get that money into prevention. You've got to get that into the front end of the system so that we prevent people going into the hospital unnecessarily, but also then becoming trapped there, which is no good for them. So I personally feel the system is completely in the wrong position. And we've got to try and bring some new thinking to taking the pressure back off and allowing the NHS to recover. But as we sit here today, 5 years on from the pandemic hammered our NHS, and I'm afraid it's not yet properly being able to start to recover.
Okay, Andy, we've got one more question, then I might take a few more. How much time have we allotted? Until 9 o'clock? Yeah? Great. Right. Neil Pye has very patiently been waiting to ask his question.
Thank you, Michael. My question goes back to the issue of accountability and some of the finer aspects of the democratic aspects of the Metro Mayor. And my question is, like US presidents, should Metro Mayors serve a maximum 2-term limit, including continuous, in their roles? And
I
also
may as well leave now because I'm in my third term.
And also, should deputy mayors be directly elected to? And one of my questions about this is that last year I was at a conference last year in London with the Constitution Unit, and somebody raised this question in front of Tony Travers and Ed Cox, and they agreed that term limits should be imposed. With Labour wanting to create more mayors and some of the things that went on in a city down the road down the motorway from where we are now, in terms of governance, I'm just wondering what your perspective is on this issue.
Thank you for your question, Neil.
I'd hate to take a vote of the audience on whether we want term limits. I mean, every politician does have a shelf life, and I think sometimes politicians not knowing when to go I would accept is a problem. I'm coming up 8 years as your Mayor of Greater Manchester, 8 years, which has been an incredible 8 years in many ways in terms of what's happened. I just was talking about some of what happened. But I've loved these last 8 years much more than I ever did the 16 years I spent in Westminster. This week, I, in many ways, achieved one of the big things I wanted to achieve when I came in as Mayor, and that was to give Greater Manchester an integrated public transport system. Where it's one system like London, tap in, tap out. I don't know if people have seen that this week or used it. That is something that, in my view, this city region should always have had. But when the buses were deregulated and everything was fragmented, we've had to work really hard. I won't go into all the details, but getting it back to one system has been a really, really gargantuan task. The point I'm making is, 2 terms, I would have been out by now. We wouldn't have seen that through. And the question is that long enough? Change, sadly, takes a while to bring about. And in my 3rd term now, I kind of feel I'm on top of it. It takes a while to get to know all 10 boroughs, but I actually do know. I feel I know all 10 boroughs now. I kind of know. Mainly the similarities between them, because they are largely similar, but there are just differences of culture and things and identity in our different boroughs. And I just think when you've got that level of understanding, and GMP, we've been through things, I feel I know GMP as an organisation, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, Barry's with us this evening, they too we've been through a big journey together. GMFRS is a fantastic organisation today, in my view the best fire and rescue service in the country. You kind of get to know things top to bottom when you've been around for a while. I'm giving you the self-serving, yes, I should stay in there. But I'm just trying to be honest with you. I know I'm in a much better position today, but I'm not. You don't and you shouldn't stay in these roles forever. And it's right to let somebody else come through. So I just would say, 3 terms, 4, I don't know, but I do understand what you're saying. But Steve Rotherham and I, we left Westminster together, the Mayor of Liverpool, to do this together. I think we both feel that we needed the time to establish devolution in Greater Manchester and in the country, and I think we have done. I think the mayors are a thing now because we've been able to go at it, work together. The voice of the North in the pandemic, we didn't half play that voice of the North back to Westminster. And I think generally, I hope you agree, I don't know whether you do, but I think the voice of the North is stronger now than it's ever been before, and that is established through devolution. They would have loved nothing more down there than Steve and I leaving as MPs to try and establish this, and us to give up after 2 terms, and because they would have wanted to kill this and get rid of it. And again, it is a long answer to a question of whether or not I should have a term limit.
Many people forget about your roles. It's very strategic, isn't it? So you need that time to bed in and also to get things going and get things up and running as well. And I think it's a great answer you gave there as well.
Neil, also inherent in your question, you said, like US presidents. I'm not entirely convinced that Donald Trump thinks he's only going to get 2 terms.
The question is, can he have another one after this one, or do you have to have content? I thought
He can't, but he would like to. Yeah. Because he says they stole the other one.
I think there's an executive order coming on that particular issue.
Yeah. Great, right, we've got 10 minutes, but I'm just going to take quick fire points from people who wanted to make points. If you could make them quick, and then maybe, Andy, you do a summary at the end of it. Is that okay? We can't take long questions, long speeches, or personal pieces of casework. Is that okay? I'll take questions. Right, this lady here first. Just get a microphone.
Yeah. Taxes. Bolton and Bury, 95% of the taxis are registered in Wolverhampton.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my
Why?
goodness.
Great. Well,
can't we get all taxis registered as a Greater Manchester taxi?
Great question.
It's a great question.
It's a very
Should we
good
take
question.
that and then take some more points?
Oh, honestly,
we'll do it. We'll do it. But
we would
take some more points.
We would agree with you, wouldn't we, Eamon? 100+%. Because like the buses, the taxis were deregulated. Anyone can work anywhere. Now, how can that be a good system? We don't know what's going on down in Wolverhampton. From a public safety point of view, we don't know what criminal records checks they're doing down there. We want all of our taxis to be registered here so that we know who they are. We license them, or our 10 districts license them, and we have a regulated system like the buses. And we don't allow our taxi drivers to be undercut, because the plates that are coming in undercut their work and their livelihood. So we absolutely want to go on a journey with our taxis that mirrors against the thing we've done with the buses. And actually on Friday, myself, Eamon, the other leaders, we're going to have a very big discussion about this very issue, and we are coming with some fairly big proposals soon about reform of taxi services in Greater Manchester to deliver, we hope, exactly what you are calling for. But the deregulation that the coalition government brought in, we're going to have to persuade this government to end the Wolverhampton phenomenon. But we're confident we can do it if we get the trade behind us.
Okay, lady just behind in the green shirt.
Originally it was going to be about hate crime, but I just want to bring the two together about the young people. Yeah, you've got the education side, but what is there for the young people to do, and what is the communication? There's a lack of, they don't know how to communicate, the lack of social skills. You go to Harper Hay, there's a massive youth zone. You go to Moston, there's a massive youth zone. There's nothing in Bury. We're very lacking for places to go for young people and for them to learn social skills, because I think the two have to go hand in hand. I think the education, the hate crime, and I think you have to start with just ordinary social skills for young people.
Yeah, completely. Oh, absolutely, Sharon. Good to see you, by the way.
Hi, Andy. Julie Lappin, and I'm here to represent a number of the providers and awarding organisations that operate at post-16 level. And just as this lady said, our NEET population is increasing, and it's increasing by the day. Our homeschooling is increasing by the day, and the skills gap at our adults' education is increasing as well. So what strategies, I would like to ask you, is what are you going to do about these issues? We know you've spoke passionately about the MBAC, which is great, and there's a lot of providers that are really support you on this. But what strategies right now can you do to address these growing issues? And also, would you be open to have conversations with these AOs to do something different and bespoke under devolution?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
AOs standing for
awarding organisations.
Awarding organisations. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we let's take a couple more? The lady in front in the lilac sweatshirt.
Hi, so I attend a wellbeing centre in Harper Hay called Number 93. People that don't know it, it's a mental health wellbeing centre, and at the evening time it turns into a crisis cafe, so an alternative to going to A&E. February, our cafe got closed. We've been fighting and fighting, the ICB, the council, the trust, they've all said we've overspent by 40k. So that's the reason why the cafe is closed. but nobody came down, no one consulted anyone, no one spoke to any of our service users, and sometimes it's the only place the people that attend this centre get a warm, hot, nutritious meal. And the majority of our age bracket is elderly people, so 50 to 75, and this is quite a concern for us. So what we were wondering is, would you be willing to come down and we give you a tour of our building and for us to have a bit of a meeting or a chat to see what we could do?
Yes.
Thank you.
No, I will. I'd only found out about this in the last couple of days. Someone had raised it with me as well. And I think it's the ICB have made the decision. But yes, I will. And I'll come and talk to you and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, next.
Thanks. Hi, Andy. Just to someone in my previous meeting.
Introduce yourself, councillor.
Oh, sorry. Tamor Tarek, councillor in Bury. Previous engagement to this, somebody mentioned something that I actually experienced last night, coincidentally, and it does affect a lot of residents in Bury. One is now the extended journey on the Metrolink, which is 55 minutes because of the works that are going on in the city centre. However, last night, around about midnight, I kind of found myself getting lost because I couldn't get to the alternative tram stop, kept getting misplaced. So I ended up coming home in a taxi. But this, please, especially made me think about the vulnerability and the safety concerns for women and girls, that at that time in the evening, that kind of route out does affect the north part of Manchester. And as you know, Bury is the last tram stop, the main last tram stop. And it did really make me think about, you know, God forbid, if the worst happened, being approached, and not being, you know, my family members were contacting me, worried as to where I was, and I was frantically getting them off the phone because I couldn't work out where to go. But you know, there isn't any signage, and I do think that there will be a question of vulnerability, and God forbid if something serious happens. So perhaps that's something we can look at from a GMP and a TFGM point of view.
Sure you will.
I'll ask Danny if you don't mind to pick that one up.
Yeah, good. The lady in the front row has been really patient, so if you could get the microphone in the blue top on the front row. Thank you.
Both have questions, so. I had a question earlier, but I just want to add on to emulate on police service. I think our real issue is visibility. We are a charity that serves the community, that are willing to contribute to whatever changes that happen in their community for their community, but then there's less visibility. Yes, we have the PCOS meetings, but not everyone can get to them. Not everyone is aware about them. We don't often get police officers walking the streets or just walking into an event at our charity to say, oh, we know there's this, do you want us to talk about this? Or what questions do you have for the community? And I think that is widening the gap of trust within the police service as well, and also minimizing the impact that a community can have in shaping the way safety looks like in a community. And it drives, you see, Manchester is a very resilient community. We are very diverse and very rich in adapting to each other's opinions as well as lifestyles and cultures. We're very welcoming. We know our neighbors and our neighbors know us, and we look out for each other. But then I feel like it's more we trust each other than we trust the system itself. And I would just encourage police officers especially to create community connectors, especially through grassroots organizations that can link them to communities and even bridge issues relating to youth crime. Okay. Families dropping into grassroots organization events, and they talk about those issues, and that's where the connection is.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah?
Andy, do you want to take those questions that we've had?
Yeah, so this, to wrap up, Michael, yeah, well, thank you, everyone. Some brilliant questions there. Sharon, your question, I think a lot about what you said. I think we need to see those facilities everywhere, and including supporting Eamon and colleagues here to have safe spaces for young people to go every night. I think that they should be in every single community.
We run 2-3 clubs a week.
Yeah.
But, it's not everybody, is it? You can't, you're depending on volunteers, you're depending on the public for funding.
It's hard, isn't it? But hard. I think we, and I had a manifesto commitment to this to this very issue, and I want to see the spread of some of those youth facilities around Greater Manchester.
Radicalisation, you're getting them in the dark, you mentioned the dark web.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen the thing, well, have we all seen it? Adolescence, you were
Adolescence,
talking about, weren't you? And I've caught bits of it. I mean, you know, this when I was saying before about the world getting darker and everyone's online too much and everyone's starting to distrust each other, aren't they? And
focus on one thing, like education, you're missing out the social skills, and you've got to go hand in. It's got to go hand in hand.
Yeah. I'm a massive believer in sport and community sport, and I think we've... Yeah, I think you've got to have a mix. I'm not saying you don't, but all of these, these things stand kids in good stead, don't they? And I think we need to use. So here's maybe my best answer, Sharon. We are getting a new funding arrangement with Whitehall, which does mean we can start to spend money differently. What we should do is move much more towards prevention as Greater Manchester, rather than constantly spending all of our money chasing people in crisis. Correct, and I think we need to, to over time start to move money towards back to prevention, away from dealing with crisis, which is sadly where we've ended up a bit too much. And before you go tonight, I wouldn't mind a quick word with you about the buses, but you know what I mean when I say that. AOs, yeah, I think it's like I was saying before to the lady on the second row. You know, the education system has to be a mix of providers, doesn't it? It's not just through big companies, big colleges, important as they are. It's a kind of mix of provision. Because actually, if we're to get those supported pathways right, or pathways that young people refer to who are NEET, who have been involved with GMP and are coming through the violence reduction unit, very different approaches will be needed, and different organisations will need to be brought in to help us provide that. So I'm very, very supportive of what you're saying. The alternative providers that are out there need to be engaged fully in our system. But we're trying to build an ecosystem, to use that word, and we look forward to taking forward that more with you. Cafe 93 is another example of one of those places that people value. And here's the thing: we go back to the NHS crisis. I was saying before, some of the wrong decisions were taken. I think we feel, as Greater Manchester leaders, Eamon, that in chasing the financial targets that NHS England told Greater Manchester it must meet following the pandemic, some of those preventative and really important things in communities were the things that were suffered. And as I was just saying to Sharon a minute ago, that's the wrong thing to cut if you're looking at a more preventative approach in the longer term. So, couldn't agree with you more. I will come down. Just might take a couple of weeks to organise or whatever, but yeah, good on you. Keep fighting for it, because clearly you all value that service, and we'll do what we can to help. Policing, Terry, we've got a strong neighbourhood structure, haven't we? I don't know if you wanted just to say something on that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, we've invested a lot of resource. We've really built the neighbourhood up. So if I'll call it at the end and just find out where that is, because we've now got pretty much up to full strength, proper old school, traditional neighbourhood policing teams back in across Greater Manchester. So I'll get them to come and put the kettle on, and they'll go and have a brew.
It's always worrying when a police officer says, "I'll collar you" at the end. You're like, oh. Will you?
Finally,
I'm going to wrap up. Have I covered all the ones that were asked? I think I did. Oh, sorry. Oh, Danny. And then I'll just do a quick wrap up, Michael, and that'll be us, I think.
We've got we have plenty of work on. We're investing in the Metrolink network. We do need to take up tracks and fix them. The work started yesterday. I will take a look at the wayfinding, but it's a case of, I think, using Exchange Square instead of Market Street just for a period of time. But I will review that for you. Yeah.
Maybe the messaging to people in this part of the world, I think it needs to, even if councillors can't find their way home, then I think we need to, we're going to have to do something. But Michael, sorry.
Just one question you didn't answer that Neil Pye asked about whether Kate Green should be elected as well.
Oh, you were... Kate, what do you think? Should we go as a ticket next time?
I was going to say, can't we just be a dream ticket? And then you buy one, you get one free.
A good answer. Very good answer. Michael, can I thank you for chairing this so well, and everybody for coming out. It's great to see so many people out tonight. We've had some fantastic contributions, haven't we, from the audience. Verity, and Matthew particularly, thank you very much for your contributions, but everyone's contributions actually. The thing I would just say is, it has been 8 years, coming up eight years, and I would not sit here before you all say I've got everything right. Of course not. It's a challenging job, but I do love it. But what I love most of all, it feels to me like Greater Manchester is we're almost bucking the trend with where the world is. Where else has something as big as the B network come through and been delivered on time and on budget? I'm looking around the country and I'm not seeing changes like that being made, but they are being made here. Where else are people saying, right, a new vision for kids on the technical path? That's what we're bringing through, and all of those live well ambitions that we've got. I think there is something about this place that really suits devolution. We do want to do things differently. We want to do things our way, and hopefully, after 8 years of this, you can feel that coming through. I'm not sure. I'll feel it coming through on the hot seat tomorrow morning, because I'm sure I'll get a lot of complaints about buses not turning up. But it is, I think, the last point from me is, it is, in my view, a new and a better way of doing politics, and you've been a part of that tonight by turning up and being here and asking the questions. I come back to what I said. Place first rather than party first. If politics ran on that principle in this country, I think it would be a lot better, because that's how we try to make it work. And if things aren't right, we're not going to give you a line, we'll kind of spin this one away because it's our side. The best thing to do is acknowledge it and speak for the place rather than the party. However you all vote in this audience, we all care about this place, don't we? And we all want this place to be the thing that's got our main focus rather than playing different agendas. And that's what we've tried to build with it. And maybe it's why devolution is spreading, Neil, around the country, because what we've done here is beginning to work. Don't forget, Greater Manchester has been growing faster than the UK economy for a decade now. And how long have we been able to say that in our lifetimes? Something here is working, but it's working because we're a team effort. We do it together, and you've done that tonight by being with us and having this conversation. I'll take back what you've said. I'll think about what you've all said. Thank you for turning up. Thank you, Michael, and thank you again to everyone at the Fusilier.